Okay, thank you so much. Perfect.
Oh, and then off any notification right so you might not.
Uh-huh.
Oh, we're like starting like soon.
I know, we're kind of like need to get going. Like the credits haven't even been written. We're starting in. God. Where's Mason?
I don't know. I just
know.
walk that way.
I have adrenaline. I'm scared. I get so nervous with public speaking.
No, you're good.
Also, like, I think maybe apart from like a few parents, I don't think anyone's listening.
That's why it's so low stakes.
I know. And we're doing literally another one next week. That if we want to have a clip, we can put that one forward. Unless you want to like be a newscaster, which I don't imagine you do.
I don't think I ain't. No. Do you?
No, absolutely not.
Alright, this is the first few pages of the script, okay? They're gonna bring the other pages.
Okay. Alright.
We all meant to, I don't really know why we have this printed out.
On a morning news program, Mayor Bill de Blasio.
I don't need this.
Yeah, I don't need it.
Private businesses
Oh, wait,
is
maybe
necessary.
so-
The mandate would require private
Yeah,
sector
that's
workers to
probably
get
about as
vaccinated
well.
before by
Here, do you want your script printed?
December 27th. Oh, did you print mine?
I think someone did.
I think I'll go next week.
Okay, so I'm gonna
but
do the
it's kind of
also-
uneven. So after, can you do Chantel's? Because
I don't really want to change it now.
it's me and me again.
I don't know. It's not. I feel like that's Audrey's.
Where are the clips
What's
going? The clips in your newscast? Are
Oh.
there no more clips?
There's
Is it the
one.
line?
There's one clip. Oh, I updated it. I updated the script.
What is going on?
The clip is here. You see your
Is it
de
in-
Blasio?
Can you just share that with me?
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah, it's
have
in
it up
the-
on my
it's-
computer. Just share it with me.
Emily, just keep it out the way it is. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So they're
Because I don't want to change it now. Because it's like
Okay,
10
yeah.
seconds.
Yeah, that's fine. But you're gonna follow it anyway, right?
Yeah, I'm just following the script.
Okay.
You're listening to Uptown Radio. It's Tuesday, December 7th. I'm Yvro.
And I'm Emily Akshian. The EPA says contaminated buildings at a Superfund site in Queens need to be demolished to protect residents' health. But that has some local business owners who are people of color or low income upset.
They're destroying our lives, our financial stability.
New York City food delivery workers want to use money from the recently passed federal infrastructure bill to pay for rest hubs, where they can eat and use the bathroom between trips. The jobs can be dangerous, and with a long list of projects in need of funding, the stakes are high.
He was murdered, but basically after finish of work, he just wanted to have a meal, stand in the park because he didn't have no other place to go at 11 o'clock at night, and he got murdered.
The federal infrastructure bill also means billions for the MTA. We asked New Yorkers where they want the money to go.
I think just keeping up with general cleanliness would be nice.
All that and more on Uptown Radio. But first, the news.
On a morning news program, Mayor Bill de Blasio said his vaccine mandate's new expansion to private businesses is necessary. The mandate would require private sector workers to get vaccinated by December 27th.
Why we're doing this. We know something already about the Omicron variant. This variant moves fast. We have to move faster. We have to protect the lives of New Yorkers. We have to make sure we never go back to shutdowns and restrictions.
The mandate also requires children 5 to 11 to be vaccinated by December 14th in order to visit establishments like movie theaters, museums, or dine indoors. The proposal comes as 4 new Omicron variant cases have been detected in New York State. The new detections were found in Suffolk and Oneida counties, each with a pair of positive cases. The discoveries are the 12th confirmed cases of Omicron in New York State. A new Siena College poll lists Governor Kathy Hochul leading all candidates in the race for New York's next governor. The poll released this morning shows Hochul polling at 36%, double the polling numbers of Attorney General Letitia James, her next closest competitor. Voters in this poll identified economic opportunity, fighting crime, and managing the pandemic as top priorities.
In a video call today, President Biden plans to warn Vladimir Putin that Russia will face economic sanctions if it includes Ukraine. According to White House officials, Biden will make clear that the sanctions against Russia would exact a very real cost on the Russian economy. In a briefing yesterday, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the call is about letting Russia know it's time to pull back their military.
It's about conveying that the right path forward here is through diplomacy. On financial sanctions, we've consulted significantly with our allies and believe we have a path forward that would impose significant and severe harm on the Russian economy.
There are currently tens of thousands of Russian troops on the Ukraine border. The Kremlin has denied intentions to invade and said its troop posture is defensive. The White House said U.S. government officials would boycott the Beijing Winter Olympics because of China's human rights violations. In response, today the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman, Zhao Lijiang, said China is opposed to the boycott.
Those politicians who clamor to boycott for political self-interest are showing off and hyping things up. No one cares whether they come or not. It has no influence on Beijing's success in hosting the Winter Olympics.
U.S. athletes would still be free to travel there in February to participate in the Games. Earlier today, Instagram announced it will roll out a new set of safety features aimed at teens, including parental controls. Instagram said parents will be able to see how long their teenagers have spent using the app and limit the amount of time they spend on it. Teenagers will also be able to tell their parents if they reported someone for a violation. This comes the day before Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, is due to testify in a congressional hearing. He's expected to answer questions on whether social media harms children and teenagers. Instagram plans for the safety features to go live in March. Gabrielle Alcalde, Columbia Radio News.
Ghislaine Maxwell's trial has brought national attention to an international sex trafficking network. But few Americans know how the underground industry works. New York City is a gateway for the industry that traffics over 400,000 people in the United States. International law around human trafficking has been largely ineffective because enforcement is low. Today, I'm taking a look inside the human trafficking network in New York City with former Special Agent Ron Katabi. He has worked throughout the East Coast and internationally. I started by asking Katabi about his role.
So I was a special agent with the IRS, Department of Treasury, the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Division. And then I transferred to the U.S. Customs special agent with U.S. Customs.
Do you believe, like in New York City, make sex trafficking and labor trafficking a possibility? Like, what are the social or economic conditions?
Okay, I will say it's all about money.
Okay.
Okay? It's not about money, but it's about money. It's all about money. Okay? Yeah. On the sex trafficking, you have predominantly it's about money, but then you have the other one where we're talking about pedophiles. Okay? But when you say sex trafficking, it's commercial. So when it's commercial, that means it involves something of value. It doesn't have to be money, Emily. It can be something of value, okay? If you give, well, I'm saying you, but if you give like a pack of gum to a kid and you have sex with this kid, okay, that's trafficking. Because you give him something of value, even if it's worth 50 cents or 10 cents, okay?
Oh, interesting, okay.
Yeah, so So it's a big money. I did a lot of sex trafficking cases. I worked a lot of sex trafficking cases in New York when I was based in New York because in my career I moved a lot. So I was in Connecticut, then I went to New York. I worked in New York, then I worked in France, then I worked in Morocco, and I was assigned to a lot of countries. And then I came back to New York, and then I ended up in Connecticut, and that's why I finished my career in Connecticut. So sex trafficking is big money. There's it's all a question about supply and demand.
Okay.
So, okay? So when we say sex trafficking, we have to really differentiate that from prostitution.
Okay. What's the difference between the two? So prostitution, you don't give something of value to the person?
Yeah, you do, but there's no coercion.
All right. Okay. So it's consent.
It's consent. Correct.
How about the international court and their role? Do they not intervene in this stuff, or?
It's very hard. Then you need to have law enforcement working on this, But, violation of human rights, even though it is part of it, so I was especially...
How about the international court and their role? Do they not intervene in this stuff, or?
It's very hard. Then you need to have law enforcement working on this, But, violation of human rights, even though it is part of it, it's very hard to prove.
Oh, okay.
And international courts, even though there is you don't think that international courts have a lot of power. Okay? It's a good system, but they're not really powerful. Unless there's a major human rights violation of, then you have governments going after this person, they put them in international court. That's why international court is able to do something, because it's got the backing of some countries working those types of cases. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like genocide, So you have countries doing it. So but if the country in itself does not police this, the international court won't have any major problem.
About a quarter of New Yorkers between the ages of 5 and 11 have gotten at least one shot of the COVID-19 vaccine. That's about 125,000 children. Parents are the ones calling the shots. As Shantan Destra reports, some parents feel the decision to vaccinate their children is a no-brainer, while others are not convinced.
Maggie Wiggins lives in Inwood, New York. She has a 7-year-old son, Thomas, who has kidney disease. Wiggins decided to vaccinate her son. She says she wanted to lower his risk of being hospitalized if he is infected. Wiggins says her background in public health and education made her confident in her decision.
There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of underpaid professionals who've actually been following this incredibly closely for almost 2 years now. And the idea that every single one of them would be horrifically wrong just seems so remote compared to the possibility that the vaccine is safe, that it is widely available, and that we should give it to our kids.
Wiggins says people are mistaking the risk of COVID-19 with the side effects of the vaccine.
I think a lot of the anxieties that have been placed on the vaccine are actually a better fit for anxieties about COVID.
These anxieties have made some New York City parents decide against vaccinating their children. Marcia Murat lives in Queens, New York, and works as an educator. She also has a son who is 7 years old. His name is Wells Fontaine. Fontaine had COVID-19 and was later hospitalized for multi-system inflammatory syndrome, MIS-C, a rare condition directly linked to COVID-19. Murat says the decision she's made not to vaccinate her child at this time is one that she did not make on a whim.
I myself and vaccinated. But the reason why I'm holding off with him is because his antibodies were acting up to begin with when he got this condition. So I don't necessarily want to go put something foreign in his body and then it has like this adverse effect. So I'm holding off.
After speaking with her son's doctors, Marat says she is worried vaccinating him may do more harm than good.
Like, I don't make any decisions just like in a vacuum. Like, not like, based on what I feel. It's more so, okay, what's the research saying? What are my network of medical experts saying? What are the doctors who service my son? What are they saying? And then try to come up with the best decision based on that information.
Marat is closely monitoring her son's health. As of today, there is no guidance from the CDC regarding the vaccine for children with MIS-C. Marat says if and when there is research that proves that children with MIS-C will not face any major risk from the vaccine, then she may consider it. For now, Marat is comfortable with her decision. Chantel Destra, Columbia Radio News.
The pandemic has changed how all of us see faces. But for those with a condition called face blindness, navigating the pandemic's new masked reality is even tougher. For a face-blind person, faces can be an unrecognizable spread of features that don't add up. Studies have shown that 1 in 50 people may struggle to recognize faces and fall on a spectrum of face blindness. We've hidden them behind masks and put them center stage on Zoom. So how have those with face blindness experienced these changes? As we trickle back into offices, Neve Rowe finds out how the face blind are navigating the new normal.
In Madison Square Park on a chilly Sunday afternoon, Jamie Boudreau, a 33-year-old tech professional living in Manhattan, sits on a bench. With his legs crossed, jacket zipped up, and hands buried deep into his pockets, he watches the people pass by.
I think I often gravitate to what people are wearing or what people are like. What are they holding, or like you're pushing a cart? What does their dog look like?
Jamie has prosopagnosia, or face blindness, a cognitive disorder that means you cannot recognize human faces. Jamie struggles to recall those outside of his close circle. So in this busy park, for Jamie,
the last thing I care about really is their face. Like the face is, 5% of who they are.
Instead, he builds a profile of the person.
And I guess this is like the tech coming out of me. It's like, this is a person. We must build a profile for them, right? There are these dimensions of people that I have to log, in my head. I have to log that, otherwise I won't remember them.
So what is the condition exactly? Erez Freud, professor of psychology at York University, says it's not simply an issue of memory or vision, but perception itself.
Face perception relies on holistic processing. When I look on your face, I do not process your eyes separately from your nose and from your mouth. I actually perceive your face as a whole.
But for people with face blindness,
they process the faces in a much more analytical manner, feature by feature.
So what's the difference between being bad with faces and face blind? Well, there's a spectrum and we are all on it somewhere. One extreme are super recognizers who see a face once and remember it decades later. On the other hand, extreme prosopagnosics can't recognize their own face. The exact number of face blind is unknown as people don't often seek treatment. The condition can be present from birth or due to a traumatic brain injury. Jamie first realized something was up as a teenager working in the CVS in his small hometown in Alabama, where everyone knows everyone. But suddenly, 20 months ago, most of us began to lead lives on video calls where
there's a name now, and that has helped a lot. Because I always have this reassurance that that's Tyler, or that's James, or that's whoever. That makes it actually a lot easier for me.
But in some ways, the pandemic has made face-to-face contact more challenging.
I went to a funeral a couple weeks ago, and one of my cousins, I haven't seen him in like 5 years. He was also dressed formally because of the funeral, and he's never been dressed formally before when I've met him, and he had a mask. And, I had no idea who he was.
But Professor Freud did an experiment to test how well people without face blindness recognize masked faces.
We found that when people looked on masked faces, it's not only that they were not as good, they were worse in terms of their face recognition abilities, they were also processed the faces in a more analytical manner.
Like those with face blindness. So with masks on, all of us are having a tougher time recalling faces. Despite this, as we trickle back into the workplace, Jamie is feeling anxious.
And it's going to be kind of strange to like have to navigate a situation like that again. I don't know how tall they are. I don't know what their bodies look like. I mean, that sounds so strange, but like having people's bodies helps, you know, because then I can like build the whole profile that.
Nevro for Uptown Radio. The Biden administration's $1 trillion federal infrastructure bill holds particular significance for New Yorkers. The MTA, the nation's largest mass transit system, is expected to receive around $10 million. That's more than the $8 billion the MTA requested in federal aid. Mason Lieb spoke with New Yorkers who hope this money will revitalize the New York transit landscape.
Ofune Oganwu stands in the middle of Moynihan Train Hall. Her hair is tied up in a pink and blue hair tie with 2 pencils tucked in. Open-air, pyramid-shaped skylights allow the natural sun to illuminate the station, and Oganwu marvels at the architecturally stunning structure, which opened in January of this year. An architect herself, Oganwu wasn't here to catch a train, though. She had a break in her day and wanted to appreciate the new extension of Penn Station.
So when you are here, it's hard to imagine that subways or any other kind of train stations could be bad.
With the expected roughly $10 billion financial boost coming to the MTA from the new infrastructure bill, Oganwu sees Moynihan Train Hall as what New York City Transit could be.
Honestly, I love this city, and I think that's why I'm so critical, because I can see its potential.
The MTA is the largest public transit authority in the U.S. with a pre-pandemic average of close to 5.5 million daily subway passengers. That's roughly the entire population of Norway hopping on the same transit system every day. That means it can get kind of dirty.
I can't believe sometimes that when I enter the train station, I've actually paid to do that to myself. So offensive.
One floor below the pristine Moynihan Hall concourse, Liam Blank, who's with the Tri-State Transportation Campaign, a commuter advocacy group, walks through the dimly lit Penn Station subway labyrinth.
So right now we're entering the A-Train Uptown platform at Penn Station. We're going through the fare gate, and we are heading up the stairs to the platform.
He says the new money will likely go in part towards revamping Penn Station and also other big-scale projects like expanding the 2nd Avenue subway and modernizing subway signals.
It's very unusual for the MTA to get that much money from the federal government. Usually they can get one of those big projects done, once every, 10 to 20 years.
The cash boost comes months after a 4-year-long state of emergency ended this summer. In 2017, after a series of service issues and train derailments, Governor Cuomo instituted the order. Blank says the state of emergency went on longer than necessary and allowed the state to skip the usual oversight involved with MTA projects. On the other side of Penn Station, at the 123 lines, Selvon Singh, a longtime subway rider, hopes the money will be used to make the subways safer for commuters.
A lot of petty crime can happen in the subway system. Definitely a lot of misplaced people in the subway system also.
Rachel Schleider, another subway regular, agrees with Singh.
I think just keeping up the general cleanliness would be nice.
Liam Blank acknowledged the need to create a cleaner public space.
The biggest part of the cleanliness has to happen in the existing Penn Station, which people have perceptions as being pretty dirty.
Blank says Penn Station's future remodel may turn it into a modernized marvel of its own, just like its new neighbor next door. An MTA spokesperson said in a statement they intend to put the money towards accelerating efforts to modernize mass transit. Mason Lieb, Columbia Radio News.
Staying with the subways now, on average, New York City commuters spend over half an hour each day waiting for public transit, and that includes buses. But according to the advocacy group Riders Alliance, the problem of waiting isn't evenly shared. The average bus rider earns less than $30,000 a year, and over half are immigrants. But the daily commute is about to get a makeover, says Mayor Bill de Blasio. He announced his New York City Streets plan on Wednesday, which promises to create faster and more reliable commutes. Danny Pearlstein is with the Riders Alliance, an advocacy group. I asked him how the plan will affect bus commutes in the city and if better buses will reduce car congestion. And so, why do you think that New York City's buses are kind of falling behind compared to other cities?
Well,
we have the distinction of having the most bus riders in the United States, which isn't surprising. We have the largest system in the largest city, but we also have the slowest buses. And so what that does is it leaves behind, well over 1 million people every day now. 40% of bus riders nearly are essential workers. The vast majority are low-income people of color. And the problem is, for several decades, politicians have ignored them. And elected officials have sort of, just completely disregarded the challenges of operating public transit on streets that are crowded with private cars.
And so do you think that this plan will make buses more reliable for commuters?
I think the plan is an important first step. But really, it's not a first step. I mean, there has been a series of efforts to improve bus service, over the past 15 years. But what this plan does is it sets us on a path for continuous improvement so that we can meaningfully improve it. So that, we do set new records every year for bus lanes, and that we better protect those bus lanes from being blocked by cars, and that we do upgrade our signals so that buses get priority at intersections, and that overall, service gets better and better. And that, coupled with, much better service on a few marquee, high-capacity, high-speed routes, overall will transform the bus system, in the course of a few years.
Yeah, and so I guess from a rider's perspective or a driver's perspective, do you think that this plan will kind of noticeably change the traffic congestion we see on the city's streets?
So the traffic congestion we have today is intolerable in a number of different respects. The inability of transit services and emergency services to move, the inability to deliver goods and services in a timely and efficient manner, the congestion, the pollution, the carbon emissions, it's intolerable. And there's no way to improve it that also doubles down on the use of private cars, right? There's no way to say, get some obstructions out of the way so that more people can drive their cars around the city. That won't work. But on the other hand, if we implement driving restrictions strategically, we can meaningfully improve the movement of people, goods, and services by relying less on cars and more on transit.
So I suppose, with de Blasio leaving office at the beginning of next month, where do you think the incumbent mayor, Eric Adams, stands on this issue? Do you think he's going to carry the plan through?
I think so. He has a robust, ambitious transportation plan of his own. It obviously won't go forward on the same timeline that de Blasio had proposed. I think of getting it done by 2024. I think we all realize that's not realistic. But he has said that he's 100% behind it. And I think what he's also said is sort of that he's committed to getting rid of some of the bureaucratic obstacles.
That was Danny Perlstein, Policy and Communications Director for advocacy group Riders Alliance. Now Mason Lee with the news.
On a morning news program, Mayor de Blasio said his vaccine mandate's new expansion of private business is necessary. The mandate would require private sector workers to get vaccinated by December 27th.
Doing this. We know something already about the Omicron variant. This variant moves fast. We have to move faster. We have to protect the lives of New Yorkers. We have to make sure we never go back to shutdowns and restrictions.
The mandate also requires children 5 to 11 to be vaccinated by December 14th in order to visit establishments like movie theaters, museums, or dine indoors. The proposal comes as 4 new Omicron variant cases have been detected in New York State. The new detections were found in Suffolk and Oneida counties, each with a pair of positive cases. The discoveries are the 12th confirmed cases of Omicron in New York State. A new Siena College poll lists Governor Kathy Hochul leading all candidates in the race for New York's next governor. The poll released this morning shows Hochul polling at 36%, doubling the polling numbers of Attorney General Letitia James, her next closest competitor. Voters in this poll identified economic opportunity, fighting crime, and managing the pandemic as top priorities. A Jersey City spokesperson said Tuesday morning a partially collapsed building as well as a neighboring building will need to be demolished after collapsing in a windstorm last night. The building, which was under construction, collapsed amid 45 miles an hour winds that swept through the tri-state area on Monday night. No injuries were recorded from the fallout. Chief Stephen McGill of the Jersey City Fire Department said the rear end of the building shifted off base and hit the side of a neighboring school. Authorities said 10 residents neighboring the building are being relocated. It's a crisp 43 degrees in the New York City area this afternoon, with temperatures expected to dip into the high 30s this evening. On the subway, delays on the northbound 1 trains in Upper Manhattan and Queensbound F and G trains are expected throughout the day. Mason Lieb, Columbia Radio News.
In a video call today, President Biden plans to warn Vladimir Putin that Russia will face economic sanctions if it invades Ukraine. According to White House officials, Biden will make clear that the sanctions against Russia would exact a very real cost on the Russian economy. In a briefing yesterday, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the call is about letting Russia know it's time to pull back their military.
The right path forward here is through diplomacy. On financial sanctions, we've consulted significantly with our allies and believe we have a path forward that would impose significant and severe harm on the Russian economy.
There are currently tens of thousands of Russian troops on the Ukraine border. The Kremlin has denied intentions to invade and said its troop posture is defensive. The White House said U.S. government officials would boycott the Beijing Winter Olympics because of China's human rights violations. In response, today the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said China is opposed to the boycott.
Those politicians who clamor to boycott for political self-interest are showing off and hyping things up. No one cares whether they come or not. It has no influence on Beijing's success in hosting the Winter Olympics.
U.S. athletes would still be free to travel there in February to participate in the Games. Earlier today, Instagram announced it will roll out a new set of safety features aimed at teens, including parental controls. Instagram said parents will be able to see how long their teenagers have spent using the app and limit the amount of time they spend on it. Teenagers will also be able to tell their parents if they reported someone for a violation. This comes the day before Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, is due to testify in a congressional hearing. He's expected to answer questions on whether social media harms children and teenagers. Instagram plans for the safety features to go live in March. Gabriela Alcalde, Columbia Radio News.
Back in New York now, and food delivery app usage is soaring as people avoid in-person exchanges during the pandemic. To stay up to speed, many of New York City's 13,000 bodegas now use apps like Uber Eats, Seamless, and Grubhub, along with grocery-based services like Joker and Gorillas. A few bodegas have even launched their own food delivery technology to cut costs. But some deli staff and some New Yorkers aren't keen on the changes. Sophie Capello reports. It's 5 p.m. on a Monday evening at Columbia Deli and Grill on Amsterdam and 123rd. The owner, Fadi Sam, is shelving boxes of inventory. He has worked at various bodegas for nearly 2 decades. In addition to using Uber Eats, Columbia Deli and Grill has their own food delivery app called One Columbia Deli. Sam prefers using One Columbia Deli to services like Uber Eats because it's cheaper for customers and for the deli. Uber Eats charges a commission fee of 30 to 35%.
And this will save a lot of money, actually. So we pay in a lot of money for those companies to just give us the service.
He says that customers often prefer to order from home, especially since the pandemic hit.
Let's say people sick, people tired, people old, so they need those stuff, they could get it to the house.
But the techifying of bodegas may be changing their charm and local community feel.
Come in politely, say hi, bye. It's really good. You connect with the community more coming to the store, actually.
That's Destiny Fry outside of Columbia Deli after picking up lunch. She lives nearby and says she never orders from the bodega with an app, despite using Uber Eats for takeout from other restaurants.
No, I actually come to the store to get it, because sometimes they get it wrong or they don't hear you on the phone correctly. So I will come here just to order my food and then pick it up to leave.
Sarah Banaz, who has worked as a cashier at Bleecker Deli in Greenwich Village for 2 months, understands that a rush of online orders can sometimes cause chaos for the deli staff. Bleecker Deli uses Grubhub, Uber Eats, Seamless, and Delivery.com. She says the best thing about using these services is that they provide their own delivery drivers.
We cannot manage both of them at the same time. We cannot do walk in, serve the food, and plus delivery guys, or setting up the delivery, setting up the orders and everything. It's pretty it's hard.
A few blocks away from Bleecker Deli in the West Village, 23-year-old Tamar Seafree began ordering groceries from bodegas using apps like Uber Eats during the pandemic. Then her work hours as an associate consultant started to pick up again, and she realized how much time it saved her.
which I know is probably more expensive than doing normal grocery shopping, but the convenience really makes it work for me, I think.
Seafree is one of the many customers who appreciates that bodegas are adapting with this technology, but she also sees the downside.
I think it does make sense for them from a financial perspective, but from like a community and culture perspective, I think it'd be nice if they didn't. But selfishly, when I do want to order on the apps, I'm glad that some of them do.
Despite changes to bodega culture and added stress on deli staff, these services appear essential for businesses to stay afloat, especially as the city experiences another uptick in virus cases. Sophie Capello, Columbia Radio News.
New York City food delivery workers are pushing the city to build delivery worker hubs. Those are designated indoor spaces where workers could rest, eat, charge their phones and bikes, and use the bathroom. The workers are hoping money from the recently passed federal infrastructure bill will pay for them. But with so many other essential services desperate for funding, like public transportation, it's unclear which projects are going to get the money they need. Anna Phillips reports.
There are over 65,000 food delivery workers in New York City. Most of them zip around on electric bikes and work for apps like Uber Eats, Grubhub, and DoorDash. If you've ordered lunch or dinner from these apps, they brought it to you. But the restaurants they pick up from often don't let them inside.
So you have to wait outside of the restaurant. Even if it's cold or hot, you have to wait up there.
That's Rafael Islas. He's been a delivery worker in Astoria, Queens for over a decade. Like most other delivery workers, he's outside all day. Through rain, heat waves, or freezing temperatures, he often has no place to wait indoors during his 12-hour shifts. And Islas says it's not just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. His electric bike makes him a target for robberies.
Look, those bikes cost $1,800, sometimes more. That's the only thing we have to make money, like to survive in this city. So that's pretty hard when you got like the bike stolen and then the next day you don't know what to do because like you have to have another one to get it to start working again.
But there can be worse outcomes than losing a bike. 12 delivery workers have been killed on the job this year in New York City, mostly from traffic accidents and robberies. This fall, Salah Uddin Bablu, a 51-year-old delivery worker from Bangladesh, was murdered by a man stealing his bike.
He was murdered, but basically after finish of work, he just wanted to have a meal, stand in the park because he didn't have no other place to go at 11 o'clock at night, and he got murdered.
That's Ildeline Colon Hernandez. She's the director of advocacy at Los Deliveristas Unidos, a group of food delivery workers who are fighting for better working conditions. This is the group that's pushing for the city to build delivery hubs.
We're about to hit one of the biggest winters, and they were in the streets. So we need to have a place for them.
Deliveristas Unidos is still figuring out the exact cost for the hubs, but they would likely be expensive. So they want money from the federal infrastructure bill, which President Biden signed last month, to pay for them. Senator Chuck Schumer pledged his support in a video on Twitter.
We can use some of the infrastructure money in our Build Back Better and BIF bills to build the kind of shelters they need.
New York is expected to get over $25 billion from the bill, but that's for the entire state. And there's a long list of other projects in need of funding. The MTA is set to receive over $10 billion, nearly half of New York's total funds. They say they desperately need money to make subway stations wheelchair accessible and to extend a subway line into East Harlem. The city also wants to expand bike lanes, and Governor Kathy Hochul wants to replace lead pipes that are contaminating drinking water. With limited funds, city and state officials are debating which projects are the most essential. It's unclear if delivery hubs will make that list, and workers like Islas are getting nervous.
Like, it's really hard. It's really hard. And then, like, December is coming, January, and the snow is coming, so they think that it's easy, and it's not. Sometimes it's too hard to be working out there.
There's no update yet on when New York will decide how to allocate the money, but it could take months. In the meantime, Islas is installing mittens on his bike handlebars to prepare for winter. Anna Phillips, Columbia Radio News.
Queens are also reckoning with workplace danger. Superfund sites are the most toxic places in the country, and New York City has 3 of them. One of those sites is in Ridgewood, Queens, and is the former home of the Wolf Alport Chemical Company. In the late 1940s and early 1950s, the company produced rare earth metals that it sold to the government to make atomic bombs. For decades, it disposed of its trash, radioactive waste, by pouring it down a sewer on site. Flash forward to today, and the Environmental Protection Agency plans to clean up the contamination. The first step is to demolish the buildings on the site, and the EPA has asked businesses to move out by the end of the year. John Gallen went there to speak with the business owners.
The site of the former Wolf Alport Chemical Company looks like an ordinary industrial block. It has a corner deli, a few commercial storefronts, and a large warehouse. There are no signs marking that it's hazardous. Silvio Hernandez owns a construction company on the site. He's been there for 13 years and also owns another property on the site that he leases to an auto body shop and an appliance store.
To me, it means everything. If they take the buildings away, that's it, I lose it all.
Silvio says he and his fellow business owners like the area because of its affordable rent prices. In May, the Army Corps of Engineers sent them each a letter explaining the money they would get to relocate. The government is offering Silvio $25,000 to move his construction company, which would help pay for his rent in a more expensive area. But Silvio collects $6,000 each month from the property he leases and is worried that he won't be able to support his family if his tenants are forced to move.
They're destroying our lives, our financial stability, to my own understanding, for no reason. Nobody has asked them to move us out from here. Nobody has ever complained about being on this site.
The EPA says there is unacceptable risk to human health for businesses operating on the site. Lynn Newman is an organizer at the environmental nonprofit 350 Brooklyn. Her work has given her insight into who is exposed to Superfund sites.
There are many environmental justice issues connected with Superfund sites. The data clearly points that they're largely situated within low-income communities of color.
Hernandez's properties have tested positive for elevated levels of radiation from thorium, an element known to cause cancer. Like other business owners on the site, he says he has never seen anyone get sick, which has made him question if the government is exaggerating the health risk. But Newman says it's more complicated than that.
It's not like you move next to a Superfund site and then within 6 months you're gravely ill. Cancers will show up years, if not decades later, and it's hard to causally link one thing to another.
Hernandez isn't the only tenant who doesn't want to move. Andy Bermeo has owned an auto body shop on the site for over a decade. He has been offered $40,000 to relocate, but thinks it's unfair. He says his business would need $100,000 to reopen in a different neighborhood because he will lose customers and his rent will be more expensive.
How we gonna go from another spot to the other and, make the same amount of money that we were making here? Me and my fellow, neighbors, will probably take this to court.
The EPA wants to begin demolishing the buildings in the spring, but says their timeline would be impacted if any tenants are unwilling to relocate. John Gallen, Columbia Radio News.
And now we head to Brooklyn. Video game players are returning to a small arcade in Sunset Park to compete again in tournaments. They are eager to play face-to-face after the pandemic shut down in-person competition. But, as Willow Row reports, the return of competition is reviving pre-pandemic discussions of sexism in the community.
Remember arcades? The thrill of inserting a quarter and getting a little burst of adrenaline in return? This is where the fighting game community was born. Here's a clip of player Sonic Fox winning EVO, the largest tournament for fighting game players in the world. But for women in the community, the experience is often different.
I've had people questioning whether I was actually going to compete or not, and then those same crowds making comments about my appearance.
This is China Bianco, a professional player.
And whispering like, oh, she's actually good, or oh, she's bad, why is she here? And people making me feel uncomfortable for no reason at all.
Pre-COVID, accusations of sexism and harassment surfaced organization-wide, from players to tournament organizers, according to gaming news site Polygon. Players voiced concerns over the general conduct towards female members, but some male players had opposing thoughts.
It seems absurd to me.
Ali Abbas, another player, says in between rounds of competition,
I think we don't need to pretend like the possibility of you, getting harassed is incredibly high when you attend a tournament.
Yet tournaments all the way up to EVO, which has a prize pool worth upwards of $250,000, were some of the worst offenders. The Washington Post revealed the co-founder of the tournament was put on leave last year after allegations of sexual harassment surfaced. Some try to keep away from the topic. Here's Henry Sen, owner of Next Level, the premier arcade for fighting game players on the East Coast.
As long as you like playing fighting games, you're all welcome, always welcome here.
While he attempts to foster this welcoming environment, he also says,
I think some people from the outside might view our toxicity, it may be viewed differently, but that's the culture. I mean, there's a lot of drama in the community, and that's going to be in any community, you know, so it's here I try to keep the drama out.
Women also want to keep the drama out. They have formed female-led groups that are working on changing the culture in the competitive scene. China Bianco is a member of one such group.
Everyone there created such a great environment and a community to help encourage other women compete in fighting games, help us overcome any challenges that we may face, and they're always really encouraging.
EVO is set to return next year after a 3-year break and now under new management. China Bianco is looking forward to the competition. Willa Rowe, Columbia Radio News.
Well, that does it for this edition of Uptown Radio. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Our foreman today was executive producer Ellie Hotelling. Leading our staff of reporters was senior producer Anna Phillips. Special thanks to our assistant producer Kiera Casino.
Director Chantal Destra coordinated our studio production with Willa Rowe and Janae Bryant. Thanks to our producers Drew Hofbauer and Sophia Ahmed.
Our web editor, John Galling, got the stream live to the web. Mason Lieb and Gabriella Alcald produced the news. Senior editor Audrey Brown and assistant editor Sophie Capello led our copy team.
Our instructors Sally Herships and Golda Arthur advised our team. I'm Nivro.
And I'm Emily Akshian. Uptown Radio is live on Fridays at 4. Until next time, you can always find us on uptownradio.org. From all of us here at Uptown Radio, thanks for listening.
Oh, that was
crazy.
That was so
we did it.
Yeah, we did it.
This was great.
Great job, guys.